It's my pleasure to introduce one of my colleagues in India. Dr. Jumishri Sharma Pathak is working as assistant professor in Indian Institute for Teacher Education, Gandhinagar, India. She did MSc in 2004 and she completed PhD in 2011 from the Department of Physics, Guwahati University, in the broad field of spectroscopy. The essence of that work she will be explaining here. So, in these words.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I am Julie. I'm from the Institute of Teacher Education, Gandhinagar. And first of all, I would like to thank Professor Anand for giving me this opportunity to visit Latvia and discuss my scientific work. So, first of all, I'll tell something about my institute, IIT. This is basically a teacher education institute, but we are running graduation, post-graduation and doctoral degree programs in the departments of arts, science and education. It was established in 2011 under the Universities Act by the Government of India. We have full-time science faculties, number 30, and there are many part-time faculties and visiting faculties visiting our institution. And there is equal importance for research in our institution in experimental as well as theoretical atomic molecular solid state physics as well as life sciences. There are researches going on mathematical sciences, educations, how to teach these things, but our prime concern is this experimental and theoretical sciences. My institute is here and my native place is here. So I have come from my native place from far east to the far west for my job. So this is one of the recent meet in our institution, that is called the Vibrant Gujarat Meet. This is the meet where people from all over the globe come and discuss the opportunities and the probable collaborations. He is our director, he is our deputy director, he is a principal, and this madam, she is from University of Helsinki, Finland, and we are doing collaborative work with us, and this is me. So, the background of my talk, we are dealing with spectroscopy. Spectroscopy, as we all know, it is a very useful branch both in physics, chemistry as well as in life sciences, and we are doing IR spectroscopy, visible, Raman, emission, absorption, fluorescence, all these things. And the samples that we are considering for the spectroscopic characterization are spices. Why spices? Because Indian people, Indian food habits are fully loaded with spices. We are very fond of spices. So we wanted to know why spices are affecting our food habits. Whether it is good for our health, whether it is bad for our health, using the spectroscopic techniques. Then we further amplified our researches towards nanomaterial and clusters. Nanomaterial in the sense that we are using nanomaterial. Nanomaterials are the heroes of science these days. But whether the nanomaterials that we are using in medical science or in cosmetics, in food packaging, etc. are good for health, or they are having some hazardous thing in them. Then clusters also. So in this way, the advantages of research are coming like this, that spices are found to be contained of some useful vitamins, and it is also found to lower the LDL cholesterol in the human body, because LDL cholesterol, we know that this is the prime reason for heart diseases. And vitiligo, this is a disease, skin disease. This is this is increasing day by day. The skin diseases, the loss of native skin pigment, and toxicity. Toxicity is related with the nanomaterials. So we tried to find out whether our spices, whether the nanomaterials that we are concerned with can lead to some conclusions about these things. So we are doing some complete spectroscopic characterizations. We are finding some spectroscopic connection between the constituents and studying the adverse or favorable effects with the human body. These are the this is the methodology. XRF. XRF is X-ray fluorescence. This is a fluorescence technique, and this tells about the elements present in a samples. FTIR, FT Fourier transform IR, FT Raman Fourier transform Raman spectroscopy. This will give us the vibrational band assignment. Fluorescence, atomic absorption, atomic emission. Atomic absorption and atomic emission, they will give us the major constituents as well as the trace elements. Mass spectroscopy will give us the mass to charge ratio. That this is similar to the things that are going on this lab. This is what X-ray spectroscopy is. We put primary X-ray sample, X-ray on the sample. We get some characteristic X-ray radiation, and this characteristic X-ray radiation tells what are the elements present in that particular sample. It may be calcium, it may be magnesium, it may be potassium, like that. FTIR, this simply tells what are the functional groups. Functional groups, as you can see, there may be CH stretching, there may be CH twisting, there may be CH wagging. These are the different types of vibrations that are associated in the sample. So we put some IR source, then we get to know what are the vibrational bands that are present in that sample. FT Raman, this is basically a scattering technique, but FTIR and FT Raman techniques are complementary to each other. If by somehow some frequency is missed in FTIR, then it will definitely be shown by the FT Raman techniques. So if we together do FTIR and FT Raman, then we get to know that both the we can be sure that no other vibrational band is left out from the sample. That is why we are doing both the FTIR and FT Raman spectroscopy. Fluorescence, it gives the emitted light with generally one frequency. It is simply excited, then it comes back with a minimum time of duration, then we get the fluorescent signal. Atomic absorption spectroscopy, it gives the trace elements. This is very simple, atomic emission spectroscopy. It is quite an older technique, but still we use this. Mass spectroscopy, this is the ionization volume where the ions and the ionization, it gets mixed, then it goes to the drift tube, and ultimately we get to know the ions according to their mass by charge, charge by mass ratio, mass to charge ratio with the ion detector. So this is our sample 1, chilies. The scientific name being Capsicum annum L. Sample preparation and collection, we dried it, first we sun dried, then we oven dried, then we crushed into powder with acid water, and we went for the spectroscopic study. So X-ray fluorescence spectra, we get peaks like this. This is the peak for sulfur, this is the peak for phosphorus. We are not showing, I am not showing all the spectra here, but this is the table. KCPS, kilocounts per second. And out of these, our major discovery is this magnesium. Magnesium 3.5 kilocounts per second, we got it with the detecting crystal PX1. Why it is so important? Because earlier studies showed all these elements, but in our sample we got magnesium. This was not detected earlier. So just to get sure, we also did this emission spectrum, and we got this line 4034.49 angstrom. This is equivalent to the magnesium.
Magnesium resonance line.
Magnesium resonance line. Yes. So we could say that magnesium is present in the chilies that we collected that are prevalent to India. So these are the trace elements, amount in ppm parts per million, and here the main thing is lead is not detected. So it is quite good for health. This is the FTIR spectrum. These are the bands that we found. This is inside the fingerprint laser. 4000 centimeter inverse to 400 centimeter inverse. This is the FT Raman spectrum, and this is the complete vibrational band assignments. This we have done with respect to some standard tables. So what are the conclusions that we can draw? So this is the recorded FTIR spectra of ascorbic acid. This is the reference. So ascorbic acid, that is the vitamin C. Vitamin C, the main point of this FTIR spectra is the presence of these 4 bands. These 4 bands. But in our spectra, we did not find these lines. Here we get only 1 line. This is the OH stress. This is for the maybe some water sample removed. So we get 1 band only. But earlier studies said that FTIR spectra, that vitamin C is a major constituent of chilies. But we did not find these 4 lines. So what is the conclusion? That vitamin C is absent in the seeds of chili. Because the earlier spectra, FTIR, this is for the seeds of chili, not as a whole. We did it in 2 parts. We did it in seeds as well as in skin. So, to be sure, we did the FTIR spectrum of chili skin. Then you can see that we get these 4 lines. So, we can conclude that vitamin C is absent in the seeds of chili, but it is present in the skin only. So, it is a good practice in India that we remove the seeds while consuming the chilies. So, this is one reason. So, fluorescence. For fluorescence, this is the fluorescence spectra, and we got peaks. One in here, one in here. So, this is the peak that is equivalent to riboflavin, that is vitamin B. So, we can say that raw chili seeds have higher content of vitamin B, that is riboflavin. And this is the peak for chlorophyll. So, it is raw, so chlorophyll must contain, but here we do not have any red band. We have the red band, but we do not have the green band.
Sorry, just question. There isn't an counts, it means you used very sensitive detection system?
Yes.
Quantum counting? Something like that, no?
Yes, this is called the SPEX fluorometer system. So time result spectrum, this is to say the, this is to determine the decay. In how much time the fluorescent signal decays, fluorescence. So we found out that for both the raw and the ripe seed, time result spectra for both the raw and ripe seeds are reveal the same lifetime. So what does it mean? It means that no change in the lifetime decay support the conclusion that static quenching does not decrease the lifetime. It has only effect in the earlier spectra. But in the time result spectra, it does not have any conclusion. Then we come to the sample 2, turmeric, Curcuma longa L. So these are the elements that we found. This is the FTIR spectrum, this is FT Raman, these are the vibration band assignments. And what is the conclusion? A strong band as 1155 is flanked by 2 weaker bones 1209 and 1116. I can show. This is here. Why this is so important? Why we did not consider these things that much? Why we didn't give this that much importance to these, and why we gave importance to these 4 spectrum allicin? So this is similar to the spectrum of trialin. What is trialin? It is a triglyceride of oleic acid. Trialin is formed by the reaction of 3 molecules of oleic acid and 1 glycerol. Trialin is the substance that requires that lowers the total cholesterol level in the body by lowering low density lipoprotein. So trialin is the element. We have some recorded spectra of trialin, and the spectra of turmeric is very similar to trialin. So what is the conclusion that we can draw? That the formation process of turmeric is very similar to that of trialin, right? So that means we can say that along with the numerous health benefits of turmeric, we can also get it prescribed for the cholesterol, for the patients that are complaining of cholesterol diseases. So this is the conclusion that we can draw from the FTIR spectrum of turmeric. Yes.
My understanding is that for turmeric, you also need the black pepper in combination for
that
it
will
to
come
be.
in my later slides. This is the black pepper. I have seen in the restaurants of Latvia, they put black pepper in so many dishes. So black pepper, the scientific name is Piper nigrum alba. I have in my home so many trees of black pepper. So I used to collect the seeds from my garden itself. So this is the FTIR spectrum as well as FT Raman. And black pepper, we can see that black pepper is related with this kind of skin disease. First of all, we see what is this skin disease. You can show that in this patient there is the loss of skin pigment. Skin gets there is color difference in the skin. So why this happens? This is due to the increased H2O2 hydrogen peroxide levels in the epidermis and in blood. So what is the prescribed remedy for this? So we should reduce the epidermal H2O2 levels, right? So how this is done? This is done with the help of a reaction. Which reaction? With the help of a dehydration reaction. How this dehydration reaction occurs? If some sort of dimer can act with alkaline hydrogen peroxide. So we need some dimer to react with the hydrogen peroxide levels in the skin. So in the spectrum, we see these kind of bands. OH stretching, CO stretching, CO stretching, all together. There are so many bands that are found in black pepper. So this sample should have some enough carboxyl dimer character. We can draw this conclusion since we have seen these many OH, CO, CO, in-plane, out-plane OH deformation. So we can say that these bands can act as reaction centers to react with the increased H2O2 level on the epidermis of the skin, leading to its reduction. That is why we can say this spectroscopic report can add to this fact that we can promote black pepper as an effective remedy in the treatment of vitiligo. Vitiligo is the name of the disease. This is also known as lipodema. Then these are the elements present in black pepper by SRF: potassium, calcium, iron, and manganese. Calcium is found in 15 kilograms per second. So there is a patented drug named pseudocatalyst. Doctors say that if you take pseudocatalyst, then also take calcium. Why? Because in that way, the efficiency level of the drug increases from 60% to 95%. We have found in our report the abundance of calcium in black pepper. So we can also say that the percentage of calcium in black pepper also strengthens the point in favor of why it should be used in vitiligo treatment.
This is the work which is done with the black pepper.
Yes.
So can I ask that what is with the white pepper?
Yeah, white pepper we can do. White pepper is nothing but once we have made black pepper, right? While there is a method of preparing the black pepper powder, we first boil them in water, right? Then we crush them. After boiling, if we remove the seeds, remove the skin, then it becomes white pepper. It's nothing like something like that. So we can do it with white pepper also, no problem. Then nanomaterials. Nanomaterials have unique properties compared to the black bulk counterparts that we all know. This is because of the quantum size effects and large surface area to volume ratio. Nanotoxicology is a subspecialty of particle toxicology. So In general, if toxicology is related with some large particle, then it is seen. But if it is related with some nanomaterials, it is not seen that much. But as we are very fond of nanomaterials these days, people say that zinc oxide nanomaterials are used in the sunscreen that women use, in so many cosmetics and in medical science. But we wanted to see if they are toxic and what is the level of toxic materials in the nanomaterials. So they are used in drug delivery, imaging, sensing, artificial implants. And another interesting thing is that nanomaterials are used as antimicrobials to target highly pathogenic and drug resident microbes. So this I have explained. So this is the study, the diseases associated to nanomaterial exposure. What are the diseases that can be that people can suffer from? Neurological diseases, Parkinson's diseases, Alzheimer's, asthma problems, so many things. So these are the nanomaterials considered in my study. Copper oxide, aluminum oxide, zinc oxide with 2% copper dot and 5% copper dot with cerium oxide. So I cannot show, because of the time limit, all the nanomaterials. So I am showing this copper nanomaterials only. So we synthesize this with the chemical precipitation method. This is a very simple method. And copper oxide nanoparticles are effective in killing a range of bacterial pathogens involving hospital-acquired infection. This is the already in use copper oxide nanoparticles. So we grew some microorganisms. This is the methodology for this growing of microorganisms. When an antibiotic is added in agar cup, the radial diffusion of this antibiotic through the agar produces a concentration gradient. So we get to see some zone of inhibition in the microorganism, in the grown microorganism. These are the 4 microorganisms that we grew in our lab: E. coli, P. subtilis, S. aureus, P. aeruginosa. These things we got from some hospital.
Those are all hospital acquired
Yes,
then?
yes. So this is the result. So these white portions, this is the zone of inhibition. Zone of inhibition. That means the nanomaterial that we put in the microorganisms, they are inhibiting the growth of that microorganisms. We could not find any zone of inhibition in E. coli. We did it twice, 4 times, but we couldn't find any zone of inhibition in this thing. Means E. coli is somewhat resistant to that nanomaterial, but we got this zone of inhibition. So my thing is, this is the zone of inhibition calculated. So what I want to do next is that we find that when nanoparticles, when applied to selected microorganisms, are found to be inhibiting the growth of used microorganisms. In a sense, this is good. So we can use nanomaterials. But the range and the characteristics of microorganisms is very similar to the human skins and human body. So we can say that nanomaterials are able to cross biological membranes and access cells, tissues and organs that larger size particles normally cannot. So in that way, nanomaterials can gain access to the bloodstream via inhalation or ingestion, can penetrate the skin. So are they safe? Once in the bloodstream, nanoparticles can be transported around the body and be taken up by organs and tissues, including the brain, heart. So this can act as very toxic. So human tissue and cell cultures, resulting in increased oxidative stress, inflammatory cytokine production, and cell death. So my next aim with these nanomaterials is that we can take some sample from the sample from human skin also, and some sample from the diseased human body parts, then we can try this nanoparticle exposure, so that we can come to some conclusion about the toxicity level at the human body. These are my research publications. Somehow this is 1, 1, 1, but it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is my first publication, International Journal of Food Sciences and Nutrition. This is spectroscopy letters. This is proceedings of PNAS. This is Journal of Physical Science and Application. This is my recent one, International Journal of Emerging Technology and Applications in Engineering Technology and Sciences. I have 5 publications now, and we are working on 2 more. This is communicated. So these are the things that we intend to do in the near future. Spectroscopic study of essential food materials and spices. I have shown 3 materials here, but we have done as many as 10, 11 food materials, and I have found so many results, and these things are going on like that. And optical emission spectroscopy of low discharge plasma and laser ablated plasma plume, mass spectrometry of different nanoparticles and clusters, detailed investigation of toxicity of different nanoparticles. And for these 2 things, we are collaborating with Physical Research Laboratory in Ahmedabad, Institute of Plasma Research, Gandhinagar, Guwahati University. This is the university from where I did my PhD. Raja Ramanna Center. This is where we did the fluorescence experiments. IIT, from there we got this FTIR. And University of Helsinki, this is a collaboration from Finland.